Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so stoked because I'm getting to talk to one of my favorite bands right now. While I'm doing this podcast, you'll see me sipping on some stuff. And what am I sipping on today? Well, I'm sipping on the Wampa fruit from G Fuel, one of my favorite flavors of all time. So make sure you check that out. Right now, we're going to be talking to Stu Folsom from the band Spiritworld. Stu, how you doing today?
Hey, what's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for being on. You guys, I love you guys. Whenever I discovered the first album, Pagan Rhythms, that's when it really just took me by storm because you guys have this unique sound to you, something I've really never heard before. And I was like, man, these guys are nuts. And what do you got? What do you do in the band yourself?
So, Spiritworld's it started out a little solo project. So I write all the songs, did the Pagan Rhythms, did all the artwork. So, it's more collaborative now that we started touring, but Death Western was still just me writing everything.
Wow.
And then a couple guys laid down some stuff in the studio for me, like our touring guitar player, Randy. He did some of the solos on Pagan Rhythms for me. And then now he plays live with us. So he came back and did some of the stuff on Death Western, you know.
And Death Western just came out not too long ago. We'll be talking about that later on in the show. So it started as a solo project. Walk me through the basics of this. What ran through your head? I know I kind of read through your Spotify bio, and I kind of got the gist there. But run me through what Spiritworld is, who's all in the band, how it started.
Sure. Yeah, those bios get convoluted because our A&R guy and label start putting in a bunch of cute stuff, and then sometimes I'm not up to date on what actually gets published out there, so it's a little, I think it's a little weird. But basically, I just I played in punk bands and hardcore bands and have been really involved in underground music forever, and so I didn't do a band for a long time, but I never stopped kind of writing songs and stuff. So I kind of got the bug again, and our rhythm guitar player Matt moved down here. So me and him and my buddy Justin, that he sings in a band called Wrist Meet Razor, we started messing around with another friend of ours, Austin, on drums, and we did a demo, and it was more like country punk rock stuff. And we played a couple shows, and I kind of just had a reckoning with myself that I was going to do a real band, maybe not tour, but I wanted to take all the things that frustrate me about writing songs and having a band and cut all that out, which meant I just holed up in my room and just demoed a bunch of stuff. And I ended up writing a lot heavier stuff because I love death metal, thrash, hardcore. So I kind of settled on this big concept idea. And I figured if I did something really out there, one, I would be into it because it's fun. Like I said, I like a lot of bands, so I get bored with 5 guys in cool death metal long sleeves. I like to have a little bit more. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that, but to really get my attention, I like both ends of the spectrum. I'm really picky on the types of music I like, but I also really love big stuff like Ghost or Amon Amarth. I also can really appreciate the more epic stuff that people do. So kind of the gist of it was just be my favorite, make my favorite band, So to do that, you got to be like Slayer, Worship, some Integrity, some Hatebreed, some Pantera, Obituary. Oh, yeah. So anybody that listens to our stuff, I'm sure they get it. And I think what's unique about it is not the vein of the music so much as the presentation and how I edit the songs and arrange all these influences, where it's keeps basically the most aggressive versions of that material. I just pluck all that out, and then I'm not the best guitar player or drummer or anything, so I just do what I can, and by the time I get it through the process, I think it's unique at the end.
There was a music video off of Pagan Rhythms that I think drew me in. It was one of those blog sites that kind of reposted it. It was the stop motion music video. What song was that?
That would have been Comancheria.
Yes, that song, that video drew me in immediately to you guys. And that's how I discovered you. And here we are. And I'm talking to Stu Folsom from Spiritworld. Hey, you. Yeah, you. I just wanted to say thanks for checking out this episode of the podcast. We're going to take a little break here because I want to talk about God's End. We got the new merch up on the site. We got hoodies, hats, t-shirts, long sleeves, and we got our EP out. It's called Sorrow Sessions. So if you dig bands like Spiritworld and bands that Stu and I are discussing throughout this episode, check us out. Give it a second. Check it out. I just want to say again, thanks for checking out the podcast. I'm having a lot of fun talking to Stu, and let's get back to the action. Stu, when it comes to sitting down and writing Pagan Rhythms, take me back then. You had all these influences. You had, you said your Slayer, your hardcore, your thrash, or death metal, but there's a little bit of country in there too. I hear it. And, it all blends together really well. So you wrote Pagan Rhythms by yourself, correct? Well, with some help.
That's just me and a Telecaster sitting. So I converted my spare bedroom. Me and my girl bought a house 4 or 5 years ago. So I had some space in there and I just kind of made a little studio just for the purpose of like demo and writing songs. And so it's just me. I only had one nice guitar, a Telecaster. So I just sat in there and like I was writing more like punk rock country stuff. And then it kind of evolved and I just kept playing harder and harder stuff. And so some of that you hear on Pagan Rhythms is leftover ideas. And when you're playing on a Telecaster and it just sounds amazing and twangy, and like when you ring out sometimes as I'm playing that stuff, it seeps in there a little bit and then I like it and I don't care. Like I have a real job. I have a day job. My band wasn't going to tour at the time. It was just me. So like, I really have no fear. I just do what I think is cool and that's it. So yeah, there's definitely some roots music that underlying through this stuff that you can hear.
And it just blends together very well. And then you guys were picked up by Century Media Records. That's kind of where it kind of exploded, right?
Yeah. Pagan Rhythms, I self-released it. And then I sold out of the vinyl and everything. And it just got a lot of interest from people that I respect. And so our A&R guy, Mike Gitter from Century Media, Ron Conflict, turned him on to Pagan Rhythms at a record store, and he just called me one day. And so I knew that I was really proud of Pagan Rhythms. And then at that point I was like, well, this band is going to blow up and be able to do stuff that I kind of wasn't thinking about doing. And then I wanted to get it out to more people. So I re-released the deal I signed with Century Media. I made sure that they re-released Pagan Rhythms through their channels. And then Death Western is the album after that. So as soon as we put out Pagan Rhythms and we went on tour with Obituary and Municipal Waste, then went to Europe. Like we've done some touring this year. So I think we're in a good spot to put out a record, like a new record, So Death Western is kind of the fruits of a couple of years of like planning and saying, okay, got to re-release this tour and then kind of kickstart the band for real.
Absolutely. And Death Western just came out this year, 2022. Tell me about basically the writing process for this. Was it any different from Pagan Rhythms? Anything different at all?
No, so Pagan Rhythms, it was really, I wrote that in isolation. I didn't collaborate with anybody except for our producer, Sam Pura, until it was time to record. And so what you heard on Pagan Rhythms, like the arrangements, 95% of that is just the demos re-recorded and cleaned up, you know what I mean, with acoustic drums, because I usually program drums. And then Death Western, I listen to Pagan Rhythms and I'm like, okay, the bar for this is a lot higher. Like I want a bigger production. I want it to sound like the Colin Richardson stuff he was doing in the, like the mid 90s where it's like a $200,000 major label record. So I was trying to bridge the gap. How do I do that with a tiny budget with Sam and like capture the aggression of the songwriting, but like have it be a really big, clean. I wanted it to sound like a band Sellout record from like 1995, but in 2022, which you can do nowadays, so like songwriting, I wrote Death Western immediately when I put out Pagan Rhythms. So it was just me playing guitar for a year straight. So that's why some of the riffs and the arrangements, I think on Death Western, they follow progression from Pagan Rhythms. It's not reinventing the style. It's just a guy that's been trying to perfect it for a year. So I felt good about the process. I didn't change much. I just collaborated a little more on the recording, and a couple of the guys that play live did some backup vocals and stuff that we didn't do on Pagan Rhythms because it was just me.
I gotcha. Okay, so DIY project, and you got some friends coming in helping out as well. A little bit bigger production, sounds great as well. What is if you follow Spiritworld on social media, you'll see that these guys are storytellers. They have music videos and they have this long story across 3 music videos. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah. So the bigger concept of this is I'm big into film stuff. And if I had my way, if I was some trust fund baby and I had $20 million to play with, I'd be making film. I love music and the live aspect of it, and playing shows and getting kids to stage dive. That's a passion of mine, but also artistically, I love to write. And so there's a whole fiction component to this where these first 3 records are going to be set in this Wild West fictional world I created where the gates of hell are being found and then opening, and kind of the end of the world set mid 1800s, right? And West Texas is kind of the sandbox that I built for this. And so on the video aspect, one of my friends, as long as I've been playing guitar, he's been making film stuff. So we just collaborated, and it's not, the videos aren't pulled from the short stories that I wrote that got published, but it's his interpretation of that. So it's your classic story by Stu Folsom, but written and directed by a friend of mine. And so that allowed me to make videos that stand up to way bigger productions that with the deal we have, we can only afford to record us playing in a warehouse basically. But because I have friends that are involved and just want to do cool shit with me artistically, I'm able to push that and have more cinematic film videos than probably a band with a similar deal and budget to work with.
Absolutely. As a broadcast major at my university and someone that's worked in radio for 10 years, I appreciate this stuff. I see the detail and I see the love and the passion behind this stuff. And that's what really drew me in. So that's what I'm trying to get across, if you're listening to this, for people to get drawn into the art, get drawn into the music of Death Western, of Spiritworld. So it sounds like you already are working on a 3rd album. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. I'm I wanted to do a more punk rock country record, but I think I'm gonna just keep finish out this Death Western, horror Western, super heavy thing, and just really I just am in the riff process right now. So I'm just sitting down every chance I get, taking drum beats and riffs and making the hardest shit possible. So as soon as I get a batch of that where the riffs and the where I'm headbanging enough to it where I'm sharing it with my brother and friends of mine and being okay, this is now shitting on what I did on Death Western, then I'll move on to the next phase of really carving that apart and being really critical and saying, I love this part, but it's got to do something fast here to make it dynamic. And then I'll probably have to write other stuff, because once I decide it needs a fast part, if I don't have it, I got to write it. You know what I mean?
Okay, that makes sense. What's usually
and we have time, we have a few shows, but we're not touring heavy until May. We go out and do a big US run that hasn't been announced yet, right into a festival run. So I have this next 4 months, I'm going to pretty much write that record and get it ready to start hitting the studio.
Okay. So the grind is on. I love it. And you have a day job as well. I think you're a lot like me. As soon as you come home, pick up that guitar, riff a little bit, record a little bit, do stuff like that. So what's usually your writing and recording process like? You just come home and have at it, or?
COVID hit, my job opened up. I got really lucky, right? Because a lot of people got affected where their jobs kind of downsized or there wasn't as much work. I work in the telecom industry for a big cable provider. And so our industry exploded because everybody went home and needed to have broadband service.
Oh, yeah.
And so I ended up taking a promotion at work where now I work for a corporate office doing process management. And so I work remote. And so I'm at home like right now, like there's our back patio with our gym. But when I get caught up on my work, I no longer am tied to like a desk job or being in a field where I have like 10 hours, I'm stuck somewhere and I can't do stuff creatively. So now, like, if I get my work done in 2 hours, like I may be inspired to play guitar or like watch a film or read a book or whatever. Like I do our merch store out of my house. So like I have a lot more of a lifestyle that suits like my creativity. So like the last couple weeks when I get caught up on work or when I'm bored at work, when like I just can't look at a spreadsheet anymore, then like I'll go do heavy metal shit or pack up orders or like answer emails and do interviews. So basically my my writing thing, it's just I try to play what I'm trying to write. I try to play guitar as much as possible because sometimes like you just play the same sound and boring stuff that just isn't inspiring. And I don't really have the skill to like creatively just like do. Sometimes I pick up the guitar and it all works out and I have like several riffs and sometimes I don't. So I just am a firm believer in like I'm not the most talented guy, but I am pretty disciplined and hardworking. So I just keep grinding and then I don't know, just keep at it. And next thing you know, you got a stack of riffs. I do everything in one project in Reaper. And so when I get ready, I'll have like, you know, not songs, but I'll have maybe 30 different things that are like part to part to part with riffs. And then I'll go back through those and be like, what's the best stuff out of here? And then I start Frankensteining together. That's why some of our songs, like it's kind of counterintuitive when you hear them. And you're like, it's strange. They go from like a thrash riff to this. And that's probably because I wrote those two things a couple months apart. And maybe they don't seem like they go together, but you know, you start writing transitions and putting them together. Sometimes opposites attract, you know?
Absolutely. Hearing this, you're probably wondering, like, why is this guy laughing? Why is this guy smiling? I'm the same exact way. I have Reaper, just a long session, and I have many notes of, okay, this riff and some songs and this riff. And sometimes that's just how it works. And, you know, today's age with digital recording and, you know, you don't need to book a studio as much anymore. I mean, it's nice, but you don't really need to. COVID helped me in that aspect. I was not lucky. I got laid off, but that's okay. It's another time. But anyway, you can sit down and write a riff and eventually it becomes maybe a song and then another song and maybe an EP and then a whole album. Who knows? So that's what I love about 2022, 2023. Speaking of 2023, what the spirit world, what do you have in store or in the back of your mind for 2023?
It's pretty much laid out. I'm gonna work on this record. We're going to Texas in January for a run of shows with Integrity, which will be fun. And then we have a really big hometown show in February with Drain and Mind Force. It'll just be complete insanity. And then we go to I don't think it's announced, but we're going to do a show with like the Liquid Metal guys in San Diego. And then we have a big tour that gets announced, I think, next month. And then US tour, a big Europe tour, and then probably do something wherever we get the best offer, either Europe or US in the fall. And then in the meantime, when we're not touring, I'll get this album set up and start tracking it, get in the studio and start putting it down for real. I'd like to have, I don't know if Century Media will be like ready to drop something, but I'm just in a groove with, I like to make records like full lengths. And I think it separates the men from the boys, so to speak, or the women from the girls, because anybody can write a couple songs. But I'm really particular about when you play my shit, like you can go front to back, be engaged. Obviously, if you don't like heavy music, it's not for you. But if you're into this stuff, like I don't make records that you can't like listen to. I want someone
no
to hit
skips,
play.
as they say.
Yeah, fuck that. Like I'm not here for that. There's plenty of bands to do that. They get artsy and like have an 8-minute song, and I'll never make it. Like I'll never play that record front to back. So because I'm trying to be my favorite band. Like my favorite band, I want to be the one that you haven't heard. Where like every 5 years I get one where I play something on repeat over and over. And it's not because there's not great bands. It's just they don't, like a lot of records are made, I don't think, to be banged. So I try and make sure that you can bang start to back. So I got to do that one more time for this trilogy. But I also want to I'm really interested in doing more roots music on this next one. So there'll probably be like a country song on there, but only if I can pull it off great enough where it doesn't ruin start to finish, back to back playing an album. But I think I can do it. I have some ideas. So that's the game plan 2023. Be creative, hit the road, play some shows,
Well, thank you for sharing that. Got me excited. So hope you're excited as well about Spiritworld. Stu, any final things you want to say to fans listening?
The one thing I will say is you start making art and people always come in and they critique your stuff or they give reviews. I have pretty thick skin. I don't care what people say, but I will say to anybody that listens to my band and then says they just rip off Slayer or if you can do it better, I'm the guy to tell you. I'm the proof. Go do it better, because I made a band that sounds like it doesn't work. The concept, everything about it sounds like it's going to be a train wreck. But you can take a Telecaster that doesn't even have EMGs in it and write the hardest death metal record people have heard in 10 years. Stop talking shit on the internet and go be creative. You got a basement, you got a guest room. Stop trolling and start building stuff. It's that easy,
I love that answer. Stu, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast today. I'm going to talk to you here in a little bit off air, okay? And that is Stu Folsom from the band Spiritworld. You got to check these guys out. It's a little bit of punk. It's a little bit of hardcore, a little bit of thrash, a little bit of country western, and it all comes together very well. Death Western is out right now, and it is such a badass record. Badass album art, badass everything about it. So check out Death Western, check out Pagan Rhythms, and get ready for even more music from the band Spiritworld. Thanks for checking out today's podcast. I will see you guys next time.